from the rain and the stone, where the wind has no name and the traveler's alone. There's warmth in the fire and truth in the tale of the watcher who walks where the bold-hearted fail. He carries no sword, yet the darkness gives way to the lantern he lifts at the end of the day. He stands on the Watchtower, still and unswayed, where the lost find a path through the fog and the fray. Pilgrims Grey, oh steward of the lands, you carry the light in your weather-worn hands. A tale at the hearth, a guide through the night. You open the gate between the wrong and the right.
Well, the road goes ever on and on, through the back alleys of empires, the shadows of smiling men. The crowns have changed. The thrones now have wheels and microphones, but the same spirits still pull the strings, right? So welcome, traveler, to the Watchtower, where the fire is always lit for those who still see through the fog. And tonight's episode isn't just another political expose. This is a map, a seed-line blueprint, a look beneath the marble floors and red carpets at the serpent-woven wiring that runs through governments, families, laws, and blood. We're going to be talking about the Kushners, the Chabad Mafia, the intelligent networks, the 666 real estate, the black cube money, and the ancient spiritual agenda behind it all. And let's be clear, this isn't just a theory. Everything I'm covering tonight, every quote, law, historical event, and name will be documented and cited. But we're not just repeating the data, we are interpreting it. We're drawing lines that never thought we'd connect. They never thought we'd connect. Because this war is older than politics, much older. And Jared Kushner was never elected, but he was given power. He wasn't voted in, but he helped direct war policy. And when the cameras blinked, he stood beside Trump. Not as a son-in-law, but as a handler, a proxy, a quiet architect. A man tied to a global religious network that has real-world intelligence connections. And a very old spirit behind its rise. So if you're looking for a popcorn documentary about corrupt elites, well, this isn't that. But if you would like to see how the Watchers rewired modern kingdoms, how the sons of fallen gods still whisper through boardrooms and back channels, and how willing human allies help build the system we now live under, well, then you've come to the right campfire. Or in, I guess it just depends where we are on the long, never-ending road, right? So sharpen your senses. The road that does go ever on, just past a city built by blood. This is Pilgrims Grey Chronicles, Robert Clark, your host, and tonight, again, we are following the trail of the House of Kushner and the beast it serves. And why are we doing this? Because if you recall, last Friday night, I mentioned 3 Trojan horses. And this is related to it, and we are continuing with this on our series of all the behind-the-scenes stuff. But before we get started, I would like to shout out a prayer request. I want to just take a moment for you to ask the Lord to intervene. Some of you may remember Jeremy Stone. We had him on the show a few weeks back. His wife, Felicia, posted a request for her sister that I happened to see on social media because we follow one another. We're all friends, right? Tisha, who's his sister Tisha, who's currently in the hospital dealing with this serious and ongoing medical crisis. I don't want to go into specifics and details, and it's not necessary. All you need to know is she needs medical help and other things related to the event she's going through. So if you're someone who prays, please lift up Tisha and their entire family. There's a lot going on, and they're going through a storm right now and could really use strength, healing, and covering. And with that being said, if you just want to take a moment while you're listening to ask our Father in heaven to aid them, to help them spiritually, physically, all of the above. In Jesus' name, do it, please. And so, This will have 7 segments to it, just so you know. And, of course, it's our Monday show, so there's going to be a lot of details to get into. So let's start. The voice behind the throne, Kushner and the Chabad hand. They called him the son-in-law, the quiet one, the peacemaker. But in the shadows of the Trump White House, Jared Kushner was something else entirely. A handler, a bridge between Zionist elite networks and American executive power. And while the world watched Trump thunder from podiums, Kushner moved with a stillness that made silence feel heavy. But don't mistake quiet for weakness. The man behind the man has ties older than the Republic, tied to the Chabad Lubavitch, tied to Mossad-linked banking, and yes, tied to the spiritual powers that have always demanded altars, even if now they're made of gold, not stone. Well, let's start this off with something, because this will kind of set the stage for things. Trump said in a Fox News interview back in 2024, March 5th, and again, I bring this up because of what I brought up Friday, and because it's related to all of this Masonic secret society, the cooperation with the Grigori or Watchers, our Anunnaki, our visitors mentioned in the Old Testament and New Testament, who don't care much for the human species, but people still will cooperate with them for power, right, and money. Maybe some willing and some unwillingly, who knows, So, in this interview, Trump made no bones about his stance, and with all the usual fanfare of applause and flags, he stated, quote, "I will not allow the Jewish state to be threatened with destruction. I will not allow another Holocaust of the Jewish people. I will not allow a jihad to be waged on America or our allies, and I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror. And it has to win, and win it fast, no matter what happens. It has to go for that." And if it were just that, I could get it. Nobody likes terrorism, but the problem with any of these people is you never know how they define their key terms, and none of them can be trusted. If they wanted to and didn't like you and you were a problem, a stick in the spokes, or a piece of dust in the eye, they would have you removed and just claim that you're a terrorist. Did they not do that to all the parents showing up to school meetings and attempt to label them all as terrorists? And when they do that, folks, I'm just telling you right now, if you don't understand the Patriot Act, which I bet most of you do, but some of you may not, and basically you'll be stripped of all your rights. You won't have any rights. They can literally arrest you without a warrant, come take you in the middle of the night, hold you as long as they want, because you're a terrorist. You've been designated a terrorist, and now you have no rights. You think you have rights, and normally you would as an American citizen, but if you're designated a terrorist by them, and I know some would argue, yeah, but they really gotta, go to the court system and get a judge and blah, 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 blah. We've already gone over how the Masons have infiltrated virtually every high office in the land. They have their judges, they have their police, they have all their people in place that they need to do whatever they want and make it look like somebody's paying a price, and they never do. If that's not obvious by now since 2020, I don't know what to tell you. It should be brutally obvious by now. But then Trump shifted tone, and the rest of the quote says this, and this should concern you. Quote, "Here at home, I will defend our American Jewish population. I will protect your communities, your schools, your places of worship, and your values. We will remove the jihadi sympathizers and Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They only want to destroy our country." So, on the surface, that sounds good. And that is because These people are wordsmiths, and they craft things carefully. This is how they propagandize and psyop you, through repeated doings of these kinds of things in the media, the news channels they control. But if you pick that apart and look at it, and just pause for a moment, what other religious group has been offered that kind of unilateral military and domestic protection pledge by a U.S. president? And did you catch the language? Remove the Jew haters. That's not targeting terrorists. That's targeting speech. That's blurring the line between criticism and criminality. And it's building the narrative for censorship and worse. Now, I would never go out and talk about a group of people that I hate. But I would defend the right of somebody, if they want to go do it, because that's in our Bill of Rights. If somebody, now you can't go do things like incite people to do terrible things to them. That's, it's against the law. But if the person wants to talk about how much they hate them, or, chocolate mint ice cream, it doesn't matter. The whole point is free speech protects speech that you don't like. And that's important. There's lots of things I don't like to hear, but I'll either counter it with my own ability to speak freely, or I will simply tune out, turn it off, turn the channel, or influence those that I know so that they are insulated and already have a good argument to be able to discern and counter somebody's ridiculous hate speech. That's a way better solution than trying to silence people. So it isn't just rhetoric, by the way, in the speech. It pairs directly with something else Trump invoked, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. He literally said, I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, praising it as a tough old law from the days when they had real politicians. But let's break this down. The Alien Enemies Act is one of 4 laws passed under the Alien and Sedition Acts, originally created by the Federalist Party to suppress immigration and criminalize speech. And here's what each part did. The Naturalization Act made it harder to become a citizen. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I think it should be difficult in our society now that because initially, immigration, you had to make it on your own. You couldn't just come to these shores and then lay up under taxpayer hammocks, right? You had to come here and make your way. Now, because we have the hammocks and safety nets everywhere, and American taxpayers are footing the bill, there should be some requirements, don't you think? You can't just let freeloaders come in and people who mean harm to the country. So I get that. And then the Alien Friends Act, it allowed the president to deport non-citizens. The Alien Enemies Act, Section 3, gave the president sweeping wartime powers to detain enemy aliens. And then the Sedition Act made it illegal to speak false or malicious statements about the U.S. government. Well, we've seen how that kind of crap plays out, right? Who gets to determine what is false or malicious statements? Did you ever think we would get to a point, and I know most of this seemed to bloom around 2020, where we had fact checkers, and they were all wrong for the most part, especially during the events of 2020, right? And we're all finding this out now, but do you know that some people still believe it? Some people still have not seen beyond the psyop and propaganda that involved all of the things that have happened in 2020. I don't want to use the key terms because that gets me flagged, because free speech is not honored on all social media. Still, it's sad, isn't it? I think it's really sad. Note to those who are the leaders of social media, we don't need you to Karen us or mother hen us. We'll be okay. We'll figure things out. We don't need you to constantly tell us, this is misinformation. This is this is that. Oh, we'll just shut you down and silence you. People can take care of themselves. We're just here to help you. I don't want your help, and we don't need your help. We'll take care of it. I really feel like all it does is make people more irresponsible in the world because everybody else is going to take care of me. Anyway, I digress. These laws were wildly controversial, even in 1798. And it's probably especially in 1798 because they seemed to care way more about liberty and freedom back then than we do now. We're more concerned about peace and safety at the cost of our freedom. And parts of them were used to justify the famous internment camps during World War II for the Japanese, Germans, and Italian Americans. That is the same act Trump invoked in 2024. So let's spell it out. Trump praised a law that can be used to criminalize dissent and target religious or ethnic groups during conflict, and tied it directly to defending Israel and removing Jew haters. Now, in my opinion, that's not America first. That's something else entirely. And I think, just because it's your guy and you support him doesn't make everything they do right. Right? And frankly, I don't really support any of our politicians. I think they're all corrupt and crooked. The swamp encompasses all of them, and they're all in it. Anyway, behind all of this, the shadow family that wields the influence, right? Let's look at Jared's father, Charles Kushner, convicted of 18 federal crimes, including illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, and witness tampering. In one of the most grotesque moments of the trial, he hired a prostitute to seduce his own brother-in-law, filmed it, and mailed the tape to his sister to silence a potential witness. Now, what does that remind you of? It's clear that this is a standard MO for all of these weasels, right? Get somebody in a compromised position. Doesn't matter the age of the individual that they're engaging in intercourse with. They just want it on tape to blackmail you. So the solution? Don't do evil, and you won't have to worry about that, right? Don't sleep with somebody besides your spouse. And don't get involved in intercourse with underage kids and violate the law. I mean, I don't know, it's some of these people I think want these things anyway, and they're fully willing to be put on video because they're all compromised. They all have these things against them. And okay, benefit of the doubt, maybe there are some that have not engaged in grotesque, immoral activity, but I feel rather certain that they're still compromised out of fear of having their families offed or themselves. Once you get to that level, it's like working in the mafia. So anyway, what did Trump do in regards to this situation with the silencing of a potential witness? Well, he pardoned him in December 2020, just before leaving office. I mean, a lot of presidents do this. I get it. And there's some worse or whatever, but that's the real club, folks. It's how it works. Power shields its own, especially when its roots go deep into banking, surveillance, real estate, and Zionist policymaking. Jared didn't just inherit a business. He inherited a legacy of corruption, influence, and loyalty to a higher kingdom than the United States. So now here's where things move into the intelligence realm. The Chabad-Lubavitch movement, often presented as merely an ultra-Orthodox Jewish sect, but it's much more than a religious organization. As investigative journalist Wayne Madsen reports, quote, Chabad houses provide safe houses and storefronts for Israeli intelligence and criminal activity right here in the United States. This includes everything from terrorism to money laundering, drug running, and prostitution. Everything we see being exposed today. Right? But it's been around forever, folks. I mean, you just need to go look up the Franklin scandal, the Franklin banking scandal in Nebraska, and you'll see how wide the web and the roots of this tree go. So in 1989, a massive bust uncovered a multinational money laundering network operating out of Chabad houses in Seattle, Los Angeles, New Jersey, Colombia, and Israel. And it goes deeper. In Bangkok, Israeli military operatives used a local Chabad house to train Thai special forces for combat along the Malaysian border, a known CIA Mossad zone. Bangkok police had long suspected that the Chabad house was a hub for the Israeli mafia's ecstasy and meth trade throughout Southeast Asia. Again, this is not conspiracy theory. It is documented. Go look up the report by Wayne Madsen. His last name is spelled Madsen. Jared Kushner is deeply embedded in this Chabad structure. He is not merely connected. He is loyal. And what kind of advisor has clearance to manage Middle East peace deals, run a pandemic response unit, restructure immigration, and rewrite economic policy, all without ever being elected? A handler. And Jared Kushner was handed an unprecedented portfolio of power, far beyond what any son-in-law or cabinet member should ever wield. And it wasn't politics. In my opinion, it was spiritual influence disguised as technocratic strategy. And when we pull back the curtain, we see the outline not just of corruption, but of ancient power structures, rewritten in modern terms. This wasn't just about pushing Israeli interests. This was about something much older, something biblical. And the main point is, Kushner was not elected. He wasn't appointed by the people. But Jared Kushner helped lead a nation, and his loyalty wasn't to the nation he served. It was to the old covenant of power, the bloodline, the network, and the spirits behind it. And also, we are not dealing with a naive king led astray by foreign advisors. This isn't Solomon and his 1,000 wives. This is something colder, sharper, and more calculated. Trump has never been seduced by the system. He's been integrated into it from the beginning. And now, the same man who stood before the UN to declare Jerusalem the eternal capital of Israel, the same man who helped broker the Abraham Accords and redraw the maps of the Middle East, is being looked to once again as a savior-like figure who can fix the chaos and restore the peace. But what kind of peace? And what cost will be paid? Because if Daniel's prophecy is correct, that a covenant with many will be confirmed before the final week begins, then perhaps the one confirming it won't come in robes or shadows, but in a red tie and a golden tower. The world is already looking for a solution, and Trump is already offering one. And not all beasts rise from the abyss with horns and flames. Some walk in through the front door of the White House. And with that, the real work begins, because the structures that empower men like Kushner, Trump, and the forces behind Chabad aren't just political, they're spiritual, ritualistic, ancient, and they need a place to operate from, and permissions. I mean, either we believe what was said in the Old Testament about the spirit behind Tyre and the Prince of Persia, or we don't. Right? That there was a principality and a power, and Paul talks about it in the New Testament. So segment 2, the Chabad house, temples or safe houses. They dot the map like stars in a night sky, but not the kind that offer navigation. These are not lighthouses. They are listening posts, storefronts, sometimes altars, and sometimes gates. From Manhattan to Mumbai, Bangkok to Bogota, Chabad houses have become one of the most globally embedded religious networks in the world. But behind the Torah scrolls and menorahs, there's a different story unfolding. A story of Mossad-linked intelligence, operations, drug smuggling rings, and dark alliances with global criminal syndicates. And yes, human trafficking. So on the surface, the Chabad Lubavitch presents itself as a friendly, ultra-Orthodox Hasidic movement devoted to Jewish outreach, like we said, especially to unaffiliated Jews abroad. Their Chabad houses are usually advertised as places for Sabbath dinners, Hebrew classes, and holiday celebrations. They seem harmless, holy even. But when you follow the funding, the intelligence links, and the criminal prosecutions, you find a much darker undercurrent. one that ties this religious movement to a global web of espionage, drug trafficking, human smuggling, and I'm not just talking about adults, and financial corruption. Again, investigative journalist Wayne Madsen, a former NSA analyst turned whistleblower, laid it bare. Chabad houses provide safe houses and storefronts for Israeli intelligence and criminal activity right here in the United States. This includes everything from terrorism to money laundering, drug running, and prostitution. So let that sink in. I mean, it shouldn't surprise us, right? Terrorism, drugs, prostitution, sanctioned behind the doors of a religious outpost. It's just how these people work. They put out, this is why Jesus said, you appear to be whitewashed, beautiful tombs on the outside, but on the inside, you are full of dead man's bones and rot and decay. In March of 1989, U.S. law enforcement busted a sprawling criminal network. Like I mentioned, it involves Seattle, Los Angeles, New Jersey, Colombia, and even Israel itself. And the charges, money laundering and currency violations, a criminal cartel wrapped in a religious shawl. And that's not ancient history, it's the blueprint. Now, Madsen writes that the Bangkok Chabad house was long suspected by Thai police to be a major role in the Israeli mafia's ecstasy and meth trade, like we mentioned. It is a key launch point for narcotics distribution all across Southeast and East Asia. Israeli military officers staying at the house under religious cover were reportedly training Thai special forces along the Malaysian border, where a Muslim separatist movement was rising. Behind the scenes, the Chabad house wasn't a synagogue. It was a military forward operating base. And that, again, that is not speculation. I mentioned a little bit of that before. I just wanted to give a bit more detail on it. But that's the testimony from regional intelligence sources. Torah by day, trafficking by night. And the same pattern emerges in Myanmar, where the Israeli mafia is reported to operate heroin labs with the assistance from Chabad-linked agents. An Israeli officer was allegedly embedded in Myanmar's feared military counterintelligence unit, facilitating these operations behind diplomatic immunity. So a Chabad house becomes the perfect shell: religious protection, diplomatic connections, minimal oversight, and maximum mobility. They're not just faith centers, these are deep state chapels. I hope you understand what it is I'm saying about that. So the most explosive case may be the Mumbai Chabad house, attacked during the 2008 Mumbai terror siege. 9 Jews were killed, including Rabbi Gabriel Holtzberg. The mainstream press painted it as religious martyrdom, but Madsen offers another possibility, and I'm not sure he's wrong. He says, he reports that Duwad Ibrahim, a powerful Indian mafia lord and drug kingpin, ordered the hit. Why? Well, because the Russian-Israeli Chabad mafia had tried to take over his turf, the Mumbai drug trade. The attackers weren't just making a statement. They didn't care about the religious aspect of this. They were collecting a debt. So it wasn't jihad, it was cartel warfare in a religious mask. But you don't get to see that unless you dig. You get to see what they psyop and brainwash you with in the news. They all get the script, and every one of them reads it almost verbatim. You've seen the videos. They just go out and, is this what we read today? Oh, okay, yeah. I don't understand that word. It doesn't matter. Well, everybody will be using it. Oh, okay. Anyway, if you step back and trace the locations, New York, Tel Aviv, London, Bangkok, Mumbai, Buenos Aires, Miami, Paris, Kiev, Moscow, what you see is not a random scatter. It is a grid, a net. They're not just cities, they're strongholds. Not just tourist zones, they're watchposts. And Chabad, whether knowingly or as a front, acts as the physical infrastructure for a spiritual control system. So let's zoom out even further, right? And link this back to the Watchers, the post-Babel spreading of their garbage. After Babel, God divided the nations and assigned them to the sons of God, the Watchers, right? The little g gods, the Grigori. They all went by different names because we had different cultures at that point, because God confused the languages and sent everybody on their merry way because they completely ignored what he said to do, right? And they all gathered in one place and built a tower that was going to act as a gateway to the gods and to shake their fist to the heavens, saying, we're not going to go into the earth and subdue it and spread throughout the earth. We're going to gather in one place and make a name for ourselves. So, again, he divided it. The rebellious ones took territory, built cities, erected temples, enslaved humanity. And their goal was never just to rule. It was to manifest through blood, through worship, and through gateways. Today, we call them embassies, bases, consulate banks, and yes, religious outreach centers. But the pattern has not changed. Where do you think they all went? Do you think they just disappeared? I mean, I know the Holy Spirit is restraining to a great degree, but they can still work through humans and even appear to be human at times, though their lawlessness is restrained currently. But their pattern hasn't changed. They're still building and still watching and still running networks beneath the altars. Chabad may wear the uniform of faith, but in city after city, the evidence suggests it functions as a hub for both the visible and invisible hierarchy of global power. And at the top of that pyramid, not just oligarchs and politicians, but the same spirits that stared back at Enoch before the flood. So the Watchers were cast down, but their structures remained, and over time, those structures were rebuilt, not with stone, but with legislation, not with idols, but with intelligence agencies, and not with temples, but with Chabad houses lighting candles above underground tunnels. And I think maybe much of their architecture remains all throughout the world, every time they try to rebuild their Novus Ordo Seclorum. I think that makes a lot more sense than this Satan's little season theory that has taken hold of so many people. They confuse all this timeline stuff and destruction and cataclysm with Daniel's 70th week. Has there been cataclysm and destruction and timeline manipulation and some sort of race of beings that built all these incredible things or taught humans how to do it too? And the orphan trains and all these other things? Yes, I'm sure they have been. But it's not the millennial reign. Next Wednesday, I'll be going over that in far more detail due to a recent YouTube comment. I'm just going to go over it all again. I don't want my channel to become a constant rebuttal of Satan's little season, but I also want to respond to the kind of questions that people are asking, and that's the main one people ask all the time and email me. So I'm going to go over a recent comment on our YouTube channel, and because out of respect to the person who wrote it, they took great effort and pains to make their logical case, and were very respectful. So I want to be respectful back and address it in our Wednesday night viewer emails, and I'll probably mostly spend 90% of my time on that particular email. So now you have something to expect come Monday. Anyway, to most people, the word Chabad really means nothing, right? I mean, it might as well be the name of a yogurt brand or a distant planet. But you would do well to learn the name, because Chabad Lubavitch isn't just a sect of Hasidic Judaism. It is a global ultra-Zionist movement with diplomatic status, deep intelligence ties, and a physical presence in over 100 countries. And their buildings, the cozy little Chabad houses scattered across the world, they may look like spiritual embassies, but in many cases, there's something much more dangerous. So let's start with some context for our new listeners. We get people tuning in all the time and from various countries. Chabad Lubavitch is an ultra-Orthodox Jewish movement founded in the late 1700s in Eastern Europe. Chabad is I'm just giving you the basics. I know there's more to this, but I don't want to have a 5-hour-long show. So I'm just going over the basics on some of this. I know some of you feel free to add what you know to further the story and elucidate and add details that I don't have time to add. But anyway, founded in the late 1700s in Eastern Europe, Chabad is an acronym for Chakma Bina Deat, Hebrew for wisdom, understanding, knowledge. Its base of operations moved from Russia to Poland, then to New York after World War II. The current world headquarters is at 770 Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn, a place many refer to, unironically, as the Vatican of Chabad. And what sets Chabad apart is its messianic expectation. Many within the movement believe their last Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who died in 1994, will return as the Messiah. Now, that may sound familiar, but unlike Christian prophecy, Chabad's Messiah isn't coming to save the world. He's coming to rule it, with Israel at the center, the Gentiles subservient, and their Noahide laws enforced worldwide. So when you see politicians, presidents, and even Christians cozying up to Chabad, know this: they are not making friends. They are making concessions to a theocratic system that does not include you in its final vision. And what is a Chabad house? Well, a Chabad house is what the movement calls its outreach centers, like embassies, where traveling Jews can find kosher meals, religious services, and a home away from home hospitality. They often operate tax-free, rent-free, and with near-complete diplomatic protection from host governments, especially in countries where Mossad and Israel business interests are active. But here's the question we're asking tonight. Is that all they're doing? It doesn't seem like it to me. Not according to Madston's investigation. So let's set aside the theory and follow the trail of facts, starting with the Mumbai Chabad house attack during the 2008 siege that killed 166 people. While the media focuses on the death of Rabbi Gabriel Holtzberg and his wife, Indian intelligence sources reported something far more telling. The attackers had specifically targeted the Chabad house because it was acting as a base for Russian, Israeli Jewish mobsters, like we mentioned, gangsters trying to carve out a piece of Mumbai's heroin and opiate trade. According to the investigative reporting of Wayne Madsen and regional intelligence officers, the Mumbai Chabad house had become a command center for Israeli mafia figures working in tandem with local Jewish crime syndicates, triggering backlash from Dawood Ibrahim's criminal network. It's not random violence. This was cartel warfare in the clothing of jihad. So from Mumbai, we follow the trail to Bangkok, where Thai authorities have long suspected the Chabad house of being a nerve center for the Israeli ecstasy and meth trade. Right? Now, we mentioned most of this earlier, and I don't want to repeat it, but essentially, I'm just making the case that these places are more than what they're saying they are on the outside. So why are they everywhere? Right? It doesn't seem to be just religious outreach. It seems to be state intelligence using faith as cover fire. There are over 4,500 Chabad houses worldwide in more than 100 countries, including war zones, financial hubs, and tiny outposts where there are barely any Jewish communities. Why? Because it's not about Jewish hospitality, it's about strategic positioning. Chabad offers a globally coordinated protected network, ties to Mossad, Shin Bet, and Zionist financiers, tax protection and diplomatic immunity, and a messianic theology that justifies global control. And in many ways, it is the perfect spiritual host for principalities, clean on the outside, hidden on the inside, a synagogue of statecraft. Right? But if you go even deeper, after Babel, the rebellious sons of God, the Watchers, were cast down but not destroyed. Their territory was divided, like we mentioned, but their mission continued to build strongholds, twist cultures, and make temples where their influence could pass through. Chabad houses, like Masonic temples or Vatican embassies, may be serving as a modern-day Watcher outpost where spirit and systems overlap. They are buildings with spiritual gravity, buildings that hum. They take root in port cities, drug corridors, cultural capitals, political choke points, energy-rich zones, just like the Nephilim did in the days of Canaan. So, hospitality is their flag, outreach is their excuse, But the real goal isn't comfort, it seems to be control. Because a temple can be more than a place of worship. It can be a safe house, right? A control room, a portal. And when the grid is finally activated, every tower in it will light up. And maybe it's not just Chabad, right? Of course it's not. Maybe these hidden strongholds aren't limited to the religious sphere. It's just one aspect. Maybe it's bigger, global, working in tandem with other agencies, right? Because what Chabad is to Mossad, USAID is to the CIA, right? I mean, we've all seen it. A friendly face, a generous hand with an agency badge in its back pocket. And even Elon Musk, one of the system's golden boys, couldn't help but admit this when ex-user War Clandestine posted the receipts of how USAID dumped billions into shady Ukraine contracts. Musk replied with just 2 words, extremely concerning. And that's the point. Whether it's called outreach aid or hospitality, these are not random acts of kindness. They're scaffolding for something else. A coordinated something in something ancient. The stage is being set, right? The players are being positioned and the mask is slipping, which brings us to our next layer. Not just what they're building, but how they justify it, right? Segment 3. The Hegelian Hammer is what I've called this. Alien Enemies Act and Sedition 2.0. Empires don't fall because of fire from outside. They fall because the tools of tyranny are already built into their walls, just waiting to be activated. And here in America, those tools are already dusted off, polished, and ready. They've just been renamed and rebranded and hidden in plain sight. Now, we mentioned this line earlier. Maybe you heard it and just let it pass. But now that we've mapped the outpost and exposed this global grid, we need to circle back because, that term. Because this one sentence reveals what the system is actually preparing to do. Again, March 5th, 2024, Trump says, I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Now, we mentioned this in segment 1, but let's go deeper because it's not just an old law, it's a resurrection, and not of liberty, but of legal tyranny. What the Watchers once did with temples and blood, modern rulers now do with legislation and fear. So it's one of 4 laws, like we mentioned earlier, right? The Naturalization Act, delaying citizenship for immigrants from basically 5 to 14 years. The Alien Friend Act, again, allowed the president to deport any non-citizen deemed dangerous. Aliens Enemy Act gave the president wartime power to imprison or deport enemy aliens. And then the Sedition Act, like we said, it's illegal to publish or speak anything false, scandalous, or malicious about the government. Yeah. That last one should make every podcaster and independent journalist sit straight up, right? So now let's connect it to the bigger system. Hegel's dialect is the age-old blueprint, right? I've mentioned this before in past videos, but I wonder if people truly understand it. I think if they did, you wouldn't see as much or any support for anybody in government any longer. You wouldn't trust anybody. You would want to just scrap it all and start over again, as the Constitution provides for, by the way. So, in a Hegelian dialect, we have the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. You create a crisis, number 1, or amplify one that's already happening, right? Then you offer a solution that the public would never accept under normal conditions. And then 3, you implement your pre-planned controls as the necessary fix. Right? 9/11, fear of terrorism, Patriot Act. Right? Then the 2020 stuff, panic over public health, emergency powers, surveillance, censorship. And then October 7th in Israel, terror and tribal trauma. And then we get new free speech restrictions and war escalations. And now, mass illegal immigration, jihadist sleeper cells, Alien Enemies Act revival. So it's not just politics, it's predictive programming. And both sides are reading from the same script. They're all in on it. They're all in the swamp. One just plays the bad cop, the other plays the good cop, right? The bad cops create the problem. Oh, let's let everybody into the country. Everybody. And you're just sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense. This is craziness. This is horrible. And then they use the media to get you all riled up and angry, blah, 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 right? And then they present your hero or your savior who comes in with all the wonderful things that you've been asking for and solves all your problems so that you'll trust him when he puts the clamps on you. You'll even invite your own chains because this is your guy, your hero, right? And that's where it gets darker, because once you understand this dialect formula, you realize many of the so-called enemies in the public arena aren't actual enemies at all. It's not left versus right. It's not CIA versus Musk. It's not Trump versus Biden or globalist versus nationalist. They're all in on the same play, acting out the chaos phase of a much older plan. Each side is assigned a role. One side burns it down, right? One side tries to put the fire out. And above them both, both sides push a third figure who emerges clean, calm, and reasonable, a king above the fray, a savior who promises order, strength, justice, and renewal. So this is really just the ultimate synthesis, right? Not just a political compromise, but a messianic counterfeit. One who will appear untouched by the partisan rot. One who talks like your grandpa, walks like a CEO, and negotiates like Solomon. One who says, only I can fix it. This would never have happened if I'd been here. You see what I'm saying? And that's the trap, because the Novus Ordo Seclorum doesn't want your vote. It wants your allegiance. It wants your worship. It wants your hope. The chaos isn't the problem. It's the marketing. And the savior is the product. They're selling you. And so many are buying it. That's why I'm here. To walk along the road that goes ever on, to help take the scales off the eyes. So let's bring back our U.S. aid connection from the last segment. When Musk replied extremely concerning to proof that U.S. aid funneled billions of taxpayer dollars into fraudulent Ukrainian aid contracts, it wasn't just corruption, it was controlled chaos. You fund a war, you destabilize a region, you pretend to fix it with humanitarian aid that never gets to the people it's supposed to, and when the blowback hits your own soil, mass immigration, terrorism, economic pain, you use that as justification to take away freedoms at home. That's the Hegelian playbook. And now they're setting the table for the next act, censorship, rebranded as anti-hate. Arrests rebranded as anti-extremism, and dissent labeled as seditious. You're seditious for dissenting against your government. Yeah. So let's be honest, they don't need the Alien Enemies Act to really silence you. I mean, big tech has already done that, right? YouTube, PayPal, Facebook, they're the new ministry of truth. But invoking it, that's something else. That's ritual language. It's summoning the spirit of empire. Because the Alien Enemy Acts has never been repealed. It's on the books, always has been, and it was used as justification for Japanese-American internment camps in World War II, warrantless surveillance under Bush and Obama, and quiet deportations post 9/11. So when Trump says he'll bring it back, he's not warning you. He's warning the system that it's time to play its part again. So the Sedition Act of 1798 made it illegal to criticize the government. And though the law was repealed, its spirit lives on in disinformation legislation, cyber threat task forces, and policies like the Disinformation Governance Board, briefly rolled out under Biden, or the EU and UK laws targeting online hate speech, or the Department of Human Services targeting domestic extremists, defined loosely enough to include parents, preppers, and podcast hosts like myself. And you lay that foundation so at some point you can then call them terrorists, and then I have no rights. They can shut me down, arrest me, do whatever they want. I hope you understand that just because they're not outdoing it doesn't mean they can't or won't. They have the means, is the point. The infrastructure to violate all of your rights are all in place. All they have to do is use certain key terms, like spelling, language. You're a terrorist. I can do whatever I want to you now. So we're entering an age where conspiracy theory equals terrorism and free speech equals sedition. The only difference, now the trials are held on Zoom, So let's strip it back, right? In the days of Nimrod, control came by building a tower. Now it comes through legislation, through emergency powers. They love that, don't they? They even brag about it openly. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And through biometric passports, emergency use, EULAs, terms of service, digital gags. The language has changed, but the spirit isn't. This is the legal architecture of the beast system, and whether Trump brings it, or Harris, or someone yet to be unveiled, it's coming, because the Hegelian hammer isn't about party lines, it's about ritual sequence. Crisis, control, collapse, solution. This is why you see so much chaos. They want it. When things are chaotic for you and they have brought it about, then they also can bring about the solution and bring about a hero that's above the fray, usually a new person or some outsider, so you won't suspect it. So they tell you it's about the illegal aliens, and they told you it was about enemies, but it was always about you. And the moment you become a threat to the narrative, you become the target of the Hegelian hammer. Just keep your eyes peeled on it. In segment 4, the 666 Fifth Avenue Canaanite builders and the architecture of the beast. Now, at first glance, this might not seem connected at all. It's just a building. But in the beginning, Cain built a city. In the end, his children are still building. And to the untrained eye, it's just another Manhattan skyscraper, right? But 666 Fifth Avenue is more than real estate. It's a ritual marker, a financial altar, and if you're paying attention, a warning. And the man who staked his legacy on that building is Jared Kushner. So, the number that should have made headlines but didn't. In 2007, 26-year-old Jared Kushner, wealthy, yes, but not yet married into power, bought 666 Fifth Avenue for $1.8 billion. Did you catch that? At the time, it was the most money ever paid for a single building in Manhattan. But let's break that down, right? Because we know they use numerology. So 666, you already know what that is. It's not hidden. It's the address. It's also the number for man. 1.8 billion. Well, that's 1,800 million. And 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. A second imprint. And Kushner's age when Trump was inaugurated, 36. 6 times 6. I don't think it's just a coincidence. It's calling card math over and over. These numbers aren't picked by accident. In occult systems, repetition seals the ritual. And this ritual wasn't for the public, it was for the initiates, for those who know what to look for. And that's how they communicate and let one another know what's up. They use certain key numbers, 33, 93, 7, 11. There's certain numbers that they'll use in certain situations, and it's to communicate amongst themselves. Just start watching movies and look for key numbers. They hide it. They'll put something like 3F on a door, right? But you'll begin to see it. So, why pay that much for a building? Well, here's the part that even the finance guys couldn't explain. The building was already a bad investment. It was struggling, underperforming, overpriced, and yet Kushner bought it anyway and lost hundreds of millions. So how did he recover? Well, in stepped Anbang Insurance, A shadowy Chinese firm with murky ties to Communist Party elites, they offered a bailout so bizarre the deal collapsed under scrutiny, but not before it showed who was willing to pay him back. And this wasn't about profit, it was about positioning, placement, symbolism, and exchange. They weren't buying a building, they were buying a favor, influence, a tribute. So let's make that visible then, right? In the Old Testament, altars were where blood was spilled to open portals, right? Seal covenants or claim territory. Today, well, I mean, there were other things, sound. There's more to it than that, but I don't have time to go into all the details. But today the altar is digital. It's commercial. You don't need bulls and goats when you can launder billions through shell firms, real estate deals, or modern art sales, right? This is how they move money and launder it. It's how bloodlines elites pay their priests and then build their temples. They sell a painting for $2 million that's worth $2, really. Or, maybe more. And it depends on the materials being used. They buy a building for $1.8 billion when it's worth, at best, $1.2. The extra? It's not just waste, it's tribute. It's a sacrifice made in code. Every dollar overpaid is a drop of blood. Every legal loophole is a sacred fire. Every contract sealed with a silent handshake is a hidden ritual with these people. In Genesis 4:17 tells us Cain built a city for his son, Enoch. Not the righteous one, but the firstborn of rebellion. You do know there's 2 Enochs, right? His descendants made tools, metalworks, and empires. Fast forward, Freemasons elevate Tubal-Cain, Cain's descendants, as the original artificer, the one who taught men how to forge weaponry and kingdoms. Kushner isn't laying bricks, he's laying systems. Economic systems built on digital trade and control. Religious systems shaping future peace accords and temple negotiations. Surveillance systems leased right inside his building. Because guess who leases part of 666 Fifth Avenue right now? TikTok. The beast's favorite algorithm, feeding mindless scrolls to billions, addicted to their own body's chemicals, right? Broadcasting from a building literally numbered after its master. So the mouth of the beast now speaks from the temple of its financier. So let's step back for a moment. You have the address, 666, the price, $1.8 billion, the owner, Kushner, the family, Chabad Connected, the mission, Abraham Accords and Third Temple Diplomacy, the tenants, global propaganda pipelines. It's not just a building, it's a cornerstone in the system that will one day demand worship, enforce compliance, and offer false peace in exchange for your soul. The old Canaanites built Babel to reach the heavens. The new Canaanite builds towers to usher in the one who fell from there. So when the beast rises, he won't rise from a battlefield. He will rise from a boardroom. And the temple he walks into won't be made of stone. It will be built with steel, sealed with contracts, and financed by men who laid their offerings in full long before you even knew his name. In Genesis, again, there were 2 Enochs, and they represent 2 destinies. Cain's Enoch, in 417, is the son of rebellion, born after the blood of Abel hits the ground. Cain builds a city in his honor, a man-made kingdom built outside God's covering. Seth's Enoch, in Genesis 5:24, is the 7th from Adam. He walks with God and is taken, body and soul, to await the return of the righteous. Cain's Enoch is earthbound and empire-driven. Seth's Enoch is heaven-bound and spirit-led. This isn't just a family feud, it's the root of 2 world systems. One builds temples to house fallen beings, the other is the temple walking with God. And for those of you who are saved, you house that same spirit in your body. First time anything like that in history has ever happened. Think about that, and you were born into this time where you're a part of God the Holy Spirit living inside your body, giving all the fruits of the Spirit, wisdom, discernment, power, authority as an ambassador and an image bearer of your Creator. I think sometimes we forget that and take it for granted. So now if you track the Cainite legacy into Freemasonry, where Tubal-Cain, a descendant of Cain, is revered as the first artificer, the original forger of weapons and sacred tools, what does this have to do with skyscrapers? Well, Freemasonry views architecture as spiritual warfare. Their symbols, compass, square, and G, represent dominion over the earth through geometry, which equals control, hidden knowledge, and the buildings of temples that channel power, alignment, and influence. Modern cities like Manhattan, Washington, D.C., and London are built on ley lines and sacred angles, with obelisks. If you haven't noticed, they're all over the globe, right? False altars and strategic monuments meant to map the heavens. And what sits near the apex of Manhattan's financial power, 666 Fifth Avenue, constructed not randomly, but placed, aligned, and filled with meaning. Geometry becomes gridwork, gridwork becomes governance, governance becomes godhood, false and digital. Then plug in the figures, right? Trump and Kushner. Trump, tower at 725 Fifth Avenue, just blocks from 666, built with gold glass, black stone, and filled with escalators to nowhere. A modern ziggurat where celebrities gather and deals are made, a temple of image and ego. Kushner Tower, Tel Aviv, proposed as a tech finance hub in the city chosen to be the secular partner of Jerusalem. It's where digital governance, surveillance, capitalism, and biometric ID systems will run quietly in the background, building the nervous system of a possible future beast kingdom. And it reminds me of the two towers from Tolkien's work. Not right down to the detail, I'm just thinking of it. So don't give me all the lore. I know it all. I get it's not a perfect analogy. I'm just thinking two towers. That's all. That's as deep as it gets. So one tower is for the spectacle, one is for the system. Together they echo the twin pillars of Boaz and Jachin, free Masonic symbols said to guard Solomon's temple, not by coincidence, but by intention. And what stands between them? Jerusalem, the prize, the trap, the counterfeit throne room. So Cain's line builds cities, Nimrod's line builds towers, the Masons build temples, and now their sons build a kingdom of steel and code to crown the king they've been waiting for, at the behest of their great architect. These are not just buildings, they are blueprints, not just structures, but summons. So, we followed the builders, the Cainite descendants, the Masonic architects, the financial priest of the New Order, all the way to the glass temples of Manhattan and Tel Aviv. But they don't build alone. Every builder needs a blueprint, right? And every kingdom needs a creed. And in this case, the blueprint comes from a much older alliance, one that binds the sacred to the secret, the Jewish mystic to the Gentile Mason, the political Zionist to the esoteric globalist. So let's zoom out, because from this point on, the web gets wider. Segment 5, Freemasons to Zionists, the wider web. So if the modern tower builders are laying stone, then the string pullers behind them are weaving thread. And this next thread runs through Scottish Rite temples, Chabad headquarters, the House of Saud, the Knesset, the Vatican, and even the White House. Different symbols, languages, but the same God, with a little g. Freemasonry, and by the way, I'm not just calling Lucifer a god. He's literally called that, and so are the other little g gods, or rebellious angels, by God himself. Because to rebellious humans, they are gods. I get that those of us who are Christians and worship Yahweh and Yahweh alone and through Jesus and the Holy Spirit, they're false gods, but they're still gods nonetheless. So, Freemasonry didn't invent secret society ritual, they inherited it. Their god is often called the great architect of the universe, but they won't say which universe. At the upper degrees, they invoke Lucifer as the light bearer, the good guy. They revere Tubal-Cain, the descendant of Cain, who forged tools and weapons. Their rituals mirror Watcher tech passed down from the days of Enoch, the bad Enoch. mixing fallen wisdom with Babylonian structure. And yet, Freemasonry's true role was not just to guard knowledge, but to build alliances. And this is where we get the tangling up. Or, what is that called? A quantum entanglement, if you want to call it that. Zionism at its core was once a political movement for Jewish resettlement, but in the hands of the Chabad Lubavitch and Masonic financiers, it becomes something else. A means to control Jerusalem, a justification for Third Temple prophecy manipulation, a spiritual vehicle to unite Gentile governments with Jewish mystics, both of whom await a Messiah, just not the same one. Chabad's Messiah is Menachem Mendel Schneerson, a man many still believe is immortal, hidden, and will return as the King of the Jews. To them, he was not just a rabbi, but a Moshiach in hiding. And then there's the Sanhedrin, quietly revived in Israel in 2004. They've begun plans for animal sacrifices, the rebuilding of the temple, and even a new world court system, all operating quietly under the radar. Who are their friends? Evangelicals like John Hagee, Trump insiders like Kushner, Masonic allies like B'nai B'rith, globalists who don't believe in God at all, but love prophecy if it gives them power, right? This is the synthesis. The Masons build the infrastructure, the Zionists control the narrative, the globalists fund both, the fallen spirits whisper the strategy, and the man who steps in to unite them all, he won't come from the shadows, he'll come from within the system. A peacemaker, a broker, a unifier, a deal cutter, someone who knows the layout of the Temple Mount and the World Economic Forum. Someone who can say to Israel, let's build the third temple, into the Saudi Arabia, hey, let's normalize relations. It's somebody who already has. So, 3 threads. Freemasonry lays the foundation, Canaanite ritual. Zionism controls the land and language through temple promise. Global technocrats create the digital change through surveillance and commerce. And together, they're not just allies, they are a beast with 3 heads. And each head thinks it's steering until the 4th one arrives, the one they all unknowingly serve. So, what began with a single city built by Cain has become a global network of temples, policies, and data towers designed to enthrone the one who whispers to them all, build it for me. Well, now some may be wondering, why does all this Masonic-Zionist synthesis matter beyond geopolitical strategy and secret alliances? I mean, who cares? Well, it's because the spiritual side of the agenda is no longer theoretical. It's not just architectural, it's liturgical. The groundwork for a literal third temple is already being laid, not in poetry or prophecy, but in courts, committees, vessels, and red heifers. And that's why we need to zoom in for a moment on the revived Sanhedrin in the Temple Institute, because they aren't just preparing for worship, they're preparing for someone to walk in and be worshipped, right? So as the architecture of the beast advances, so too does the spiritual scaffolding, because every tower needs doctrine, every kingdom needs rituals, and every throne needs legitimacy. In 2004, after nearly 1,600 years, a group of around 70 rabbis gathered. It's interesting that it's 70, right? In Tiberias to reinstate the Great Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish court that once governed Israel under Moses and during the Second Temple era. They claimed a return to Semitic ordination based on Maimonides' formulas, and in December of that year, members of the reconstituted Sanhedrin ascended the Temple Mount after ritual immersion to publicly declare that their intent to see the temple built. Since then, this new Sanhedrin has issued rulings on military policy, claiming authority to decide in matters of warfare, called for mass aliyah, or Jewish return to Israel, especially in light of global unrest. They established a Noahide court system for Gentiles, claiming jurisdiction over non-Jews who adhere to the 7 laws of Noah, publicly declared Hamas to be Amalek, an ancient biblical enemy of Israel, framing the modern war in spiritual terms. So it's not just symbolic, it's a parallel government being constructed brick by brick in the shadows of the Dome of the Rock, at least since 2004. and probably prior to that. So founded in 1987 by a Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, the Temple Institute, which goes along with this, has spent decades researching, constructing, and consecrating the sacred tools needed for a fully functioning Third Temple. According to former director Chaim Richman, the Temple Institute is actively engaged in the research and preparation of the resumption of service in the Holy Temple, creating over 60 sacred vessels and preparing priestly garments. So, they have already crafted golden menorahs, incense altars, Levitical vestments, built a stone altar that has been ritually purified and is ready to use, and imported, as many know, 5 red heifers from Texas back in 2022, candidates for the purification sacrifice required in Numbers 19. I personally feel like they've either already done this or are about to do it. So these are not symbolic reconstructions. They are functioning ritual objects made according to Halakhic law in anticipation of resumed sacrifice. They even refer to their work not as a dream, but as preparation for when the temple returns, not if. So all of this is happening as Israel signs normalization pacts with Gulf states, as Jerusalem negotiates Abraham Accord expansions, and as figures like Jared Kushner are hailed as Middle East peacemakers. But ask yourself, why does the Temple Institute now have strong support from Zionist parties and growing approval among Knesset members? It didn't before. And why is the Sanhedrin pushing for the legal authority to oversee temple sacrifice? And why are Gulf nations now in secret and public talks to allow new Jewish presence on the Mount? These aren't just political shifts, they're spiritual permissions designed to do at least these 3 things: restore the legal framework for temple governance, remove barriers to rebuilding on the Temple Mount, and broker a peace that allows for worship, but under whose kingdom? So, the physical towers are rising, the courts are reconvening, the altar is being rebuilt, and the world is cheering for a peacemaker. But what if the peace they celebrate is a covenant of deception, the foundation of the final beast temple? Right? So what we've seen here are the priests are dressing, the altar is ready, the courts are convening, and the temple blueprint is no longer symbolic, it's stone and gold and breath. But how did we get here? Who laid the scaffolding that allowed the beast to rise in plain sight disguised as peace? Because behind every public movement, whether Zionist, technocratic, religious, or revolutionary, there's a long shadow cast by the builders of old, and it's time we name them. In Middle-earth, it was Sauron, right? Moving all of his chess pieces. So, I'm calling this scaffolding through the centuries, from Weishaupt to the CFR. So Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "Nothing in politics happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way." Hey, I agree with you, buddy. Absolutely. So history didn't drift into this moment. It was calculated, coded, and constructed by a network of elites, philosophers, mystics, revolutionaries, and financiers who were following a playbook handed down from the spirits older than Babel. And this is what our series is all about, right? Exposing some of this and letting you know what's going on. So the Illuminati, founded by Adam Weishaupt in 1776, wasn't just an anti-clerical think tank. It was a secret priesthood of Enlightenment radicals designed to infiltrate Freemasonry governments and churches. At the Congress of Wilhelmsbad in 1782, Masonic lodges and Illuminati cells merged under one network, establishing shared goals of global revolution, abolition of monarchy, religion, and private property, creation of a new rational world order. Remember the French Revolution? That was a beautiful revolution of rationality, wasn't it? How many people died and were beheaded? Yeah, just the ones that the rational people thought weren't rational. So maybe the fact checkers of the day, right? So Weishaupt's motto, the ends justify the means. Does that sound familiar? That sounds like just a rewording of do as thou wilt from Crowley. In a letter attributed to Albert Pike, head of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, he lays out a chilling plan. 3 world wars to usher in Luciferian rule government. The 3rd war would pit Zionism against Islam, dragging the world into chaos. So they're probably not done, folks. The quote reads, "We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, and the pure doctrine of Lucifer shall be finally brought out in the public view." Even the authenticity of the letter is disputed, or even if it is, the blueprint seems frighteningly accurate. At least the first two world wars that he described were right on the money. We're just waiting on the third. And then again, we have Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, who described Lucifer as the Logos, the bright morning star, the light of divine wisdom incarnate. She believed fallen angels were guides of human evolution, ancient wisdom beings, and that Christ was merely one ascended master among many. Her occult doctrines inspired the New Age movement, the Fabian Society, gradualist socialism, and even the UN's spiritual framework, just doing the bidding of her predecessors, only with a more spiritual aspect in mind. So, speaking of socialists, Karl Marx wrote in a poem, "I wish to avenge myself against the one who rules above." Sounds like Nimrod, doesn't it? Well, he called for the destruction of religion, family, and morality, and envisioned a world where the state replaces God. Lenin, trained by elite financiers and hidden Freemasons, said, "Give me just one generation of youth, and I'll transform the world." Meanwhile, the Fabian Society, the British socialist think tank, chose a wolf in sheep's clothing as its logo. Why? Because they believed in slow infiltration, not open revolution. The same serpent, just a whisper instead of a roar. And then bring in the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations, the American Outer Court. Founded in 1921, after the fall of Woodrow Wilson's League of Nations dream, the CFR became the American command post, and it has deeper ties than that. It was called other things prior to this, but eventually called the CFR. So, global banking interest, technocratic policy, internationalist ideology. Its members have included Henry Kissinger, Bill Clinton, George Soros, David Rockefeller, and today nearly every Secretary of State, CIA Director, and Federal Reserve Chairman is either CFR or Trilateral Commission. These are not think tanks, they are priesthoods in suits carrying out the vision of Weishaupt and Pike under the banner of peace, progress, and security. So, if you're wondering how a third temple, a digital ID system, and global political unity are all converging so fast, just follow the scaffolding, because the bricks were laid centuries ago by men who serve something ancient, something shining, something fallen. Right? The old phrase, out of chaos, order. It's not just a phrase, it is their religion. And you can even hear it in their slogans. Right? Make America great again. Build back better. They love that crap. Because they're the ones who made it bad to begin with so that they could build it back better and make things great again. Don't let them fool you. They caused the problem. They're the ones who pushed you out of the boat when you couldn't swim and then save you. So whenever the world spins out of control, wars erupt, currencies crash, cities burn, someone always benefits, and it's almost never the people. 9/11 happens, surveillance state explodes, right? The 2020 stuff hits, wealth shifts to the top 0.1%. Do you know how many small businesses were destroyed when you were not allowed to go out? And you had to wear a diaper on your face? And you were threatened with the loss of your job, family, friends, everything, because you wouldn't do what you were supposed to do and cooperate if you were one of those like me. Although Mayor Blasio did offer us cheeseburger and fries, right? So there is that. There was that positive thing. And I think there might have been other beneficial things at first, but just like a angry boyfriend, when you don't give them what they want, they turn fast, right? We were going to experience a winter of death because we suck because we won't go along with what they want. Unbelievable. So global protests erupt, and we get new social contracts and digital ID infrastructure to follow. Crisis is their currency. Collapse is their catalyst, because only in the ruins can they offer a new Messiah and a new kingdom. And here lately, we've had the dirty trio, right? The CIA, more than intelligence, it's a high-tech oracle network forged in World War II and baptized in MKUltra, mind control, and coups. The Mossad, Israel's sword and shadow with deep ties to organized crime, child trafficking networks, and the Chabad Mafia. Skull and Bones Club, Yale's Black Lodge, where the elites are initiated through mock coffins and death rituals and, I've heard, sexually disgusting things. Bush, Kerry, the architects of both war and peace, and who ties them all together? Bloodlines, ritual, brotherhood, spiritism. It's not espionage, it's priestcraft with a budget. Certain cities aren't just random chaos zones, they're test labs for beast infrastructure. Chicago, a longtime stronghold of Freemasonry, corruption, and black budget deals. Headquarters of Obama's rise, a likely Skull and Bones grooming operation, and most recently, Mayor Lori Lightfoot openly said on camera, there's a new world order, and we need to govern accordingly. I promise you that wasn't a gaffe. It was a confession. And she might have been one of those stooges that's just too dumb to realize what she said openly. Chicago is one of many. D.C., London, Tel Aviv, Geneva, even Las Vegas all serve as nodes in a spiritual and surveillance grid. So what we're witnessing isn't just economic manipulation or intelligence overreach. It's a ritual theater powered by fallen spirits, willing avatars, useful fools, and millions of sleepwalkers. The enemy of your enemy is still your enemy if he's just another puppet in a longer game. They're not fighting each other. They're performing a dialect, a Hegelian illusion that lets chaos birth the solution they planned a long time ago. So, they need a crisis. To enthrone their false king, they must first disillusion the world. The church must look weak, and boy, does it ever. Does it not? The world must ache for peace. The system must collapse, but not randomly, precisely as they want it to and have planned for it to. And in that collapse, the counterfeit kingdom will rise. And before we press into the final segment, I'd like to spotlight, while I'm thinking about it, a few fellow watchmen, others sounding the trumpet and shining light where shadows gather. Shepherd for the King. I love his stuff with Greg Baker. He offers consistent deep dives into how biblical prophecy intersect modern governance and spiritual warfare. And he's a voice I would love to feature on our show if he was willing to do an interview. I would totally have him on. And then on TikTok and Instagram, I like watching Haley Podge masterfully connecting occult symbols, cultural trends, and media manipulation, making the hidden visible for thousands of her followers. You know, my hat's off to her. She's doing a great job. And then one of my favorites, George Hobbs of The Fact Hunter, right? Truther.net, I think, is his website, delivering uncompromised, deep research on secret societies and shadow operations, right? Conspiracies, coincidences. He gives pure insight, no filters or algorithms, folks. And then I really enjoy also the guys at Days of Noah. I think that they are building a strong presence with videos on biblical end times, spiritual significance of current events, and hidden geopolitical narratives proving that prophecy still matters. And these voices across podcast platforms and websites are not drifting, they're marching in formation, and they are echoing a warning that cannot and shouldn't be ignored. All of us. Right? In segment 7, our final segment, the old gods wear new faces. Remember the verse, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's not just poetry, it's policy. It's a battlefield memo from Paul to the last generation. And in this hour, we're seeing what it really means, right? Because the old gods never left. They simply changed their clothes. In ancient days, the Watchers, those sons of God who fell at Mount Hermon, sought embodiment. They wanted influence, yes, but more than that, they wanted flesh, to feel, to dominate, to be worshipped, and to have offspring to replace us. They didn't die in the flood. Their spirits remain disembodied and angry. And now, in this late hour, they found new avatars in boardrooms, temples, palaces, and private planes. Though they don't need them, they can take human form and you would never know. You know their names, but you don't know who's wearing them. Jared Kushner doesn't stand on stages. He doesn't campaign. He doesn't need to. He operates like Azazel, the fallen architect who taught mankind forbidden things. He moves behind the curtain, brokering peace treaties that redraw ancient territory lines, pushing biometric tech and Abraham Accords, buying real estate under the cover of business. He's not just an advisor. He's a modern-day high priest presiding not over nations, but over narratives, even if he doesn't see it that way. And like many chosen families, the Kushners aren't the source. They are the skin suit, the host, the ones who say yes, open doors, and sign the bloodless contracts on behalf of powers much older than politics, giving them permission and cooperating with them. And let's stop pretending these are just quirky Hasidic outreach centers, these Chabad houses. They are mirrored across the globe, intelligence linked in multiple nations, always tied to power, finance, or diplomacy, and they form a kind of spiritual and surveillance grid, a modern attempt to house presence. The Tower of Babel tried to ascend to the heavens. Chabad's network seems designed to bring something down. And not just them, but U.S. aid as well. The Watchers were cast into the shadows. These houses offer keys to let them right back in. And these aren't just ideologies, they are vessels of invitation. Masonic oaths, spoken agreements with unseen powers, Zionist nationalism, political cloak for spiritual conquest, technocratic governance, the Tower of Babel 2.0, now with satellite coverage. And the rituals, the symbols, the numbers, 666, 33, 18, they aren't decoration, they are contracts, and every time they are performed, they give legal access to spirits waiting to wear someone new. And of course, not all of them are inhuman. Some of the most dangerous players in this drama are entirely human, but they've made their choice, right? They may not have been possessed, they were promised. They shook hands with darkness in exchange for legacy, wealth, influence, immortality through history or digital memory. And they host without resistance. They aren't victims, they are partners. And that's what makes this system so deadly. It's not just demons in disguise, or fallen angels, or rebellious Gregorian angels. It's men and women with faces, credentials, and smiling speeches who willingly carry ancient blueprints inside them. So what does that mean for you? Well, this episode wasn't just about the Kushners or Freemasonry or Chabad. It's about how spirits walk among us right now and how humans have made that possible. Daniel saw the Prince of Persia behind the empire. John saw 10 horns on a beast, each one a ruler, a king, a voice. We see them too. They walk red carpets, they sign legislation, they kiss babies on TV, and move gold behind closed doors. So if you're asking how one family, one real estate transaction, one puppet government, or one ancient symbol can connect to it all, the answer is simple. They're not the source. They're the skins, the cloaks, the costumes, the willing participants, and the play they're putting on is older than Babel. With that being said, wrapping up segment 7, one thing I want to say is before we close out tonight's journey, I want to say this clearly for those listening closely or maybe hearing me for the first time. This is not anti-Semitism because I'm not an anti-Semite. This is just being spiritually discerning. We understand through the lens of divine counsel worldview that Yahweh did choose Abraham's descendants, and through them he brought forth the law, the prophets, and the Messiah himself. And that covenant still matters. That people still matter. In the final week of years, the 70th week of Daniel, or time of Jacob's trouble, it's still ahead of us. And during that fire, many from the remnant of Israel will see through the deception and finally call upon the true Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus Christ. Not a political savior, not a false prince of peace, but the one who was pierced and who is returning soon. So we call out these power structures not in hatred, but in truth and discernment, because love warns. Love exposes, and love tells the truth, even when it's wrapped in smoke and mirrors, bloodlines, and thrones. So let's wrap it up, shall we? If something clicked or cracked open for you, if this helps you see the map more clearly, then consider subscribing, sharing, or sending it to someone who's been asking questions about these things. We don't grow because of algorithms, folks. We grow because of pilgrims like you doing your part, sharing a torchlight on the path, right? Getting the message out also from your own Watchtower, your own influence. And if you want to connect deeper, support the show or join the growing circle around this Watchtower. Hang with us at the inn, visit our pages, check the links below, or just stop by the inn. And there's always room at the table for those seeking truth. And we'll be back next time with more dots to connect, more shadows to reveal, and more signs in the sky. And until then, walk wisely, watch deeply, and remember the road goes ever, ever on, right? I love that poem and song. I would sing it, but my throat has had enough. So I love y'all. Godspeed to you, and enjoy the rest of the work week. And I will see you Wednesday night, where I will spend extra time handling the Satan's Little Season email that I got once again. See ya.
Hey! Gather round, ye travelers, lend me your ear. A tale of heroes who knew no fear. Through shadowed woods and mountains steep, their legacy lives where the wild winds sweep. Raise your tankards high and sing for the grey pilgrims and what they bring to every corner. Their stories stay. Hail the chronicles of Pilgrims Grey. Through cursed lands where few would tread, the brave walked forth where many fled. Lanterns lit the endless night, their spirits burned a guiding light. Raise your tankards high and sing for the grey pilgrims and what they bring to every corner. Their stories stay. Hail the chronicles of Pilgrims Grey. The laughter fades, yet echoes strong in every heart. Their timeless song, Mer's